Ex-husband's shocking confession forces ex-wife to make a life-changing decision. What's next? Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the main characters. Emily sat alone in the small coffee shop, her eyes focused on the cup of steaming coffee in front of her. She couldn't believe that after all these years, Jake had come back into her life. She hadn't heard from him since their messy divorce, and now, here he was, sitting across from her, looking almost exactly the same as the day they had parted ways. The moment he walked in, a wave of mixed emotions flooded Emily's heart: anger, confusion, and a strange sense of nostalgia. The man who had once been the center of her world was now just a distant memory. But today, that memory was making an unexpected return. Jake took a deep breath, clearly nervous. He had something to say, something that weighed heavily on his chest. Emily noticed the tension in his posture, the way his fingers fidgeted with the edge of his coffee cup. She couldn't help but feel a rush of anger. What could he possibly have to say that was worth hearing after everything he had put her through? But despite her emotions, Emily found herself listening closely. Emily, Jake began, his voice soft but steady. I need to tell you something. Something I should have said a long time ago. Emily's heart skipped a beat. Her mind raced with possibilities. Was this another one of his attempts to win her back? Or was it something worse? Whatever it was, it had to be important. Jake continued, his gaze dropping to the table. The truth is, I never wanted the divorce. I was scared. I made a mistake. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She stared at him, unsure if she had heard him correctly. You were scared? She repeated, her voice trembling with disbelief. Jake nodded, looking up at her, his eyes filled with regret. Yes, I was. I was afraid of losing myself, of losing everything I thought I knew about who I was. But I should have fought for us, for our marriage. Emily's mind was swirling. She had always wondered what had gone wrong between them, but hearing this now, after everything, felt like a punch to the gut. She had spent so many years trying to move on, trying to make peace with the past. And now, Jake was telling her that all those years of heartache had been based on a misunderstanding, a fear he hadn't been brave enough to face. The confession hung in the air between them, heavy with the weight of lost time. Emily felt her chest tighten as she realized the truth of his words. Jake had been too afraid to fight for her, for them, when it really mattered. And now, he was asking her to make a decision, one that could change everything. The moment felt surreal. Emily had spent so long wondering if she could ever trust him again, and now she was faced with the reality of it. Could she forgive him? Could she ever let go of the pain that had defined their relationship for so long? Jake's gaze never wavered, his eyes pleading for her understanding. But Emily knew that whatever decision she made today would shape the rest of her life. She could feel the weight of that choice pressing down on her, and for the first time in years, she was forced to confront the possibility of a future she never thought she'd have to consider. What would she do? What was next? Emily sat there, her mind racing, trying to process everything Jake had just told her. The coffee cup in front of her was long forgotten, its contents now cold and untouched. She glanced at Jake, his expression one of deep regret. He was waiting for her response, his eyes searching hers, as if he was hoping she would say something that would make everything right. But how could she? How could she forgive him so easily after everything that had happened? All these years, Emily had convinced herself that she was better off without Jake. She had moved on, built a life for herself, and learned to trust again. But now, sitting here, facing him, everything felt so much more complicated. The man she once loved was sitting across from her, revealing the fears and insecurities that had kept him from fighting for their marriage. It felt like a cruel twist of fate. I don't know what you expect from me, Jake, Emily said, her voice shaking slightly. You can't just come back after all this time and expect me to forget everything. Jake nodded slowly, his face filled with understanding. I know. I don't expect forgiveness right away. I needed to tell you the truth. I needed you to know that I never stopped caring about you. I never stopped thinking about what we could have been if I hadn't been so afraid. Emily took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She had so many emotions swirling inside her: anger, sadness, confusion. But most of all, she felt a deep sense of betrayal. For years, she had tried to make sense of their marriage, of what went wrong. And now, Jake was telling her that it had all been a result of his own fears and doubts. Could she really accept that? Could she allow herself to believe that it wasn't all for nothing? She glanced down at her hands, twisting them nervously in her lap. You left me, Jake, she said quietly. You made a choice, and I had to live with it. I had to rebuild my life without you. And now you want me to just forget all of that? Jake's expression softened, and he reached across the table, his hand hovering just above hers, as if unsure whether to touch her or not. I don't want you to forget, Emily. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not fighting for you, for us. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you. I know I can never take back the years we lost, but I'm asking for a chance to make things right. Emily felt her heart tug at his words, but she quickly pushed the feeling aside. She couldn't let herself get swept up in the emotions of the moment. Not yet. I don't know if I can do that, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can trust you again. Jake's face fell, but he didn't back away. He stayed there, waiting. He knew that it wasn't going to be easy, but he was willing to fight for her. For them. I understand, he said softly. I know I don't deserve your trust. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn it back. I'll give you all the time you need. I need you to know that I'm here. And I'll always be here. Emily sat in silence, her heart torn between the love she once had for Jake and the pain he had caused her. Could she really forgive him? Could she give him a second chance? The decision she faced was one of the hardest she had ever made, and she knew that whatever she chose, it would change everything. Her future. Her life. She took another deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside her. She couldn't make this decision right now. Not today. Not like this. But she knew one thing for sure: everything was about to change. And she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. Emily woke up the next morning with a sense of heaviness in her chest. The events of the previous day played over and over in her mind like a broken record. Jake's confession, his apology, his plea for another chance, all of it lingered in her thoughts. She had spent the night tossing and turning, unable to find peace. The weight of the decision she had to make was overwhelming. Could she really forgive him? Could she let go of the pain from their past and trust him again? As the morning light filtered through her curtains, Emily knew she had to make a choice. She couldn't keep living in this state of uncertainty, constantly torn between the past and the future. She needed clarity, but it felt like everything was clouded by doubt. She walked into her kitchen, trying to distract herself by making a cup of coffee. The familiar routine of her morning gave her a small sense of comfort, but it didn't last. The reality of her situation hit her all over again. Jake was back in her life, and everything had changed. She took a sip of her coffee and stared out the window, her mind still reeling. She had built a life for herself, one that didn't involve Jake. She had learned to rely on herself, to heal from the wounds he had caused. And now, with his return, all of that seemed to be at risk. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. She glanced at the screen. It was a message from Jake. Emily, I know you need time. I just wanted to remind you that I'm here, whenever you're ready. No pressure. I just want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. Emily's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't giving up, and it only made things harder for her. She had been so sure of herself, so confident in the life she had created after the divorce. But now, she wasn't so sure. Could she really go back to him? Could she really allow him back into her heart after everything that had happened? Her mind raced as she thought about the years they had spent together, the good and the bad. She remembered the way he used to make her laugh, the way they had shared so many dreams for the future. But she also remembered the heartbreak, the disappointment, the feeling of abandonment when he had walked away. It wasn't just that he had left, it was the way he had left, without a word, without a fight. She had been left to pick up the pieces of her shattered heart while he moved on with his life. And now, he was asking for a second chance. But did he really deserve it? Could she ever trust him again? She couldn't answer those questions yet. But one thing was certain, she needed to figure it out soon. The longer she waited, the more confused she became. She had to make a decision, one way or another. Emily took a deep breath and set her phone down. It was time to stop running from the truth. She couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. She had to face her feelings and decide what was best for her future. She couldn't let Jake's return dictate her happiness. She had already fought too hard to get to where she was. And now, it was time for her to make the next move. The question was, what would it be? Emily sat at her kitchen table, the soft hum of the morning filling the air as the reality of her situation settled over her like a heavy fog. Her phone buzzed again, and she reached for it without thinking. Another message from Jake. Emily, I know it's hard, and I'm sorry for making things so complicated. I'm not asking for everything right away, just the chance to prove that I can be the man you deserve. She stared at the screen for a moment, her fingers hovering over the keys, unsure of what to say. She hadn't responded to his last message, and now, his words made her feel even more uncertain. The last thing she wanted was to hurt him, but the thought of reopening that chapter of her life, of letting him back in, was terrifying. It wasn't that she didn't still care for him, she did, in ways she couldn't quite explain, but trust was something that took time to rebuild, and it wasn't something she could give him just because he asked for it. She had worked too hard to move on, to rebuild her life after everything that had happened. And yet Jake's presence, his apology, seemed to chip away at the walls she had so carefully constructed. She put the phone down, rubbing her temples in frustration. What was she supposed to do? Could she really forgive him? Could she ever see him the same way again after all the pain he had caused her? She had given him everything once. Her heart, her trust, her future. And when he walked away, it had felt like she had lost herself in the process. The idea of doing that again, of risking everything on someone who had left her so easily before, was terrifying. But then again, maybe Jake had changed. Maybe he wasn't the same man he was when they were married. He had sounded sincere in his messages, his apology heartfelt. But sincerity wasn't enough, was it? She needed more than words. She needed actions. She needed proof that he was willing to do whatever it took to earn back the trust he had broken. The thought of meeting him again, of facing him, filled her with a mixture of dread and longing. Was she ready to face him again? Was she ready to open her heart to him, to let go of the past, and try to build something new? Or was she simply setting herself up for more heartbreak? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of her doorbell ringing. She jumped, startled by the unexpected sound. She wasn't expecting anyone. Hesitantly, she stood up and walked to the door, her heart racing. When she opened it, there stood Jake, looking just as nervous as he had the day before. "Hi," he said, his voice soft, his eyes searching hers. "I hope it's okay that I came by. I needed to see you. I needed to talk to you in person." Emily didn't know what to say. She stood there for a moment, staring at him, her mind spinning. This was it. This was the moment of truth. Would she let him in, both literally and figuratively, or would she close the door on the possibility of ever having him back in her life? The decision felt impossible. Her heart was telling her one thing, her mind another. She needed time. Time to think, time to process. But most of all, she needed time to figure out what she truly wanted. "Jake," she said quietly, finally finding her voice. "I need some space to think. I can't make this decision right now. It's too much. Jake nodded slowly, his face falling with disappointment, but he didn't argue. I understand, he said quietly. I'll give you the time you need. Just know that I'm here, whenever you're ready. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Emily standing in the doorway, more confused than ever. She closed the door gently behind her and leaned against it, feeling the weight of the moment settle deep in her chest. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure: whatever decision she made, it would change everything. Emily spent the next few days in a haze of confusion, unable to make sense of everything that had happened. Jake's visit had left her more uncertain than ever. She kept replaying their conversation in her mind, questioning everything he had said. Was he really sincere? Or was this just another attempt to fix things on his own terms, without considering how much damage he had caused? The more she thought about it, the more she realized that her feelings for Jake had never really gone away. Even after everything, a part of her still cared for him, still missed the person he used to be. But that part of her was buried deep beneath the layers of hurt, betrayal, and fear. She had built a life without him, a life that was hers and hers alone. And she wasn't sure she was ready to let go of that independence just to take a chance on him again. Emily tried to focus on work, to throw herself into the routine she had established over the past few years. But everything felt like a distraction, like she was running away from the decision she needed to make. No matter how much she tried to push Jake out of her mind, he kept creeping back in, his words echoing in her ears. I'm sorry for not fighting for us, he had said. I just need you to know that I'm here, and I'll always be here. Those words, so simple yet so powerful, stirred something inside her. Could she really let go of everything they had been? Could she really move on without wondering, what if? Every day felt like an emotional battle, and Emily was exhausted. She knew she needed to make a choice, but how could she choose between the life she had worked so hard to create and the possibility of a future with Jake? There was so much fear, so much uncertainty about opening her heart again. It felt safer to stay in the life she knew, even if it meant keeping Jake at arm's length. But deep down, she knew that choosing safety meant choosing a life without the possibility of love, without the possibility of something real, something that could make her heart feel whole again. Emily had spent so many years alone, healing from the past, and now, it felt like she was on the brink of something new, something that could either be the greatest risk or the greatest reward. She picked up her phone, the same phone that had been buzzing with messages from Jake over the past few days. She hesitated for a moment before typing a response. Jake, I've been thinking a lot about everything. I need to meet with you again. Can we talk? She hit send before she could change her mind. As soon as she did, her heart raced with anticipation. This was it. This was the moment where she would either open herself up to the possibility of a future with Jake, or close the door completely. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew that she couldn't keep living in limbo. Emily had to make a decision, and this time, she was going to face it head-on. Whatever the outcome, she was ready to finally confront the past and decide what kind of future she wanted to have. She sat back in her chair, taking a deep breath. The road ahead was uncertain, but at least now, she knew she was ready to take the first step. Emily sat in the coffee shop, waiting for Jake to arrive. Her heart was pounding, each beat a reminder of the decision she had to make. This was the moment she had been dreading and anticipating at the same time. Her mind raced, going over everything that had happened, everything Jake had said, every moment that had led her to this point. She looked down at her phone, where Jake had responded to her message with a simple, "I'll be there in 20 minutes." She had sent the message with hesitation, but once she hit send, there was no going back. She had committed to seeing him, to facing the past, and now she had to see what the future might hold. Emily's hand trembled slightly as she picked up her coffee, taking a sip. It was still warm, but it did little to calm her nerves. She had so many questions, so many uncertainties. Could she trust Jake again? Was she ready to open herself up to the possibility of loving him again? Or was she just setting herself up for another heartbreak? Her thoughts were interrupted when she saw him walk through the door. Jake looked different somehow, more mature, more serious. It had only been a few days since they last spoke, but in that short time, it felt like so much had changed. He walked toward her, his eyes meeting hers, and for a brief moment, all the walls she had built around her heart seemed to crumble. "Hey," he said softly as he sat down across from her. "Thanks for agreeing to meet." Emily nodded, not trusting herself to speak just yet. She needed time to gather her thoughts, to figure out what to say. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," Jake continued, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I know I can't change the past, but I'm hoping we can move forward from here. I want to show you that I've changed, that I'm not the same person I was when we were together." Emily looked at him, trying to see beyond the words. Trying to read his expression. Was he really different? Or was this just another apology, another empty promise? She wasn't sure. "Jake," she began, her voice quiet but firm. "You hurt me. I've spent years trying to move on from the pain you caused. It's not easy to forget that." Jake's eyes softened, and he reached out to touch her hand, but Emily pulled back instinctively. She wasn't ready for that yet. "I know," he said, his voice full of regret. "I know I can't expect you to forget, and I don't want you to. All I'm asking for is a chance to prove that I'm not the same person. I'm asking for a chance to show you that I can be the man you deserve." Emily took a deep breath, trying to steady the storm of emotions inside her. She had heard him, and she knew that his words were sincere. But words weren't enough. They never had been. She needed more than just promises. She needed time. "Jake, I don't know if I can ever trust you the way I used to," she said softly. "I need to see it, not just hear it. I need to see that you're willing to fight for this, for us." Jake nodded, his face filled with determination. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes," he said, his voice steady and strong. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm here, and I'll stay here, no matter how long it takes." Emily's heart ached at his words. She wanted so badly to believe him, to believe that they could make it work, but she couldn't ignore the fear that still lingered in the back of her mind. What if it didn't work out? What if they were just repeating the same mistakes? She couldn't answer those questions yet, but she knew one thing for sure: this was the beginning of something new, something that could either bring them back together or tear them apart once and for all. As the conversation continued, Emily realized that she wasn't ready to make a decision yet. But for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to hope. She allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for them after all. Emily walked along the quiet path in the park, her thoughts still swirling from her meeting with Jake. It had been 2 days since their conversation, and she still wasn't sure where she stood. Part of her wanted to believe that they could have a second chance, but the other part of her was terrified of making the wrong choice. Her mind kept replaying the same questions. What if she let him back and only to be hurt again? What if she closed the door on something that could truly be great? She found a bench by the lake and sat down, letting the cool breeze wash over her. The sound of the water lapping gently at the shore was soothing, but it did little to calm the storm inside her. The past few years had been difficult, but they had also been freeing. She had rebuilt her life, created a world where she no longer needed Jake. The thought of going back to the way things were, to the uncertainty and pain of their marriage, felt almost impossible. But then again, Jake had changed, or so he said. His words, full of regret and determination, had stayed with her. Maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe this time, things would be different. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to quiet the inner conflict. The decision was hers to make, but it wasn't an easy one. She had so much to consider: the life she had built for herself, the love she once had for Jake, and the person she had become in his absence. Could she really walk away from all of it? Or could she find it in her heart to forgive him, to trust him again? The decision wasn't just about Jake. It was about her too. It was about what she wanted for her future, about what kind of life she was willing to build moving forward. She couldn't go back to the past. That was clear. But could she build something new with Jake by her side? The uncertainty of it all made her feel like she was standing at a crossroads. She didn't have all the answers, and part of her wasn't sure if she ever would. But she knew she had to make a decision. She couldn't stay stuck in this place of indecision forever. Emily opened her eyes and looked out across the water, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. The future was uncertain, but one thing was for sure: whatever she chose, it was up to her to create her own happiness. It wasn't about waiting for Jake to make things right. It was about finding the strength to make the right choice for herself. She stood up from the bench, her decision starting to form in her mind. It was time to face her future, whatever that looked like. And whether or not Jake was a part of it, she was ready to move forward, to live her life on her terms. She walked away from the lake, the path ahead still unclear, but her heart a little lighter with the knowledge that the power to shape her future was in her hands. Emily sat quietly in her living room, the weight of her decisions still heavy on her shoulders. She had spent days trying to process everything, and yet, when it came down to it, she still didn't know what the right choice was. The question had become not just about Jake, but about herself. What did she truly want from her future? She had built a life without him, a life that was comfortable, predictable. She had grown used to being on her own, relying on herself. The thought of changing all of that, of opening her heart to someone again, was terrifying. But then there was Jake. His presence lingered in her mind, the sincerity in his eyes when he spoke about wanting to be better for her, for them. Could she ignore the possibility of something real, something that could heal the wounds of their past? The idea of rebuilding that trust, of taking that leap, felt both exhilarating and paralyzing at the same time. She stared at the phone in her hands, her thumb hovering over his contact information. What if this was the right moment? What if, by some miracle, things could be different this time? But how could she be sure? The fear of repeating past mistakes held her back, yet a small voice inside her whispered that this might be her chance for closure, or even something more. After a long moment, she put the phone down and stood up. The indecision had gone on long enough. She needed to make a decision, and she knew that the only way forward was to face Jake, to have that final conversation. If she was going to move on with her life, she needed to either make peace with the past or let it go completely. She wasn't sure if she was ready, but she had come to understand that some decisions weren't meant to be easy. It wasn't about making the perfect choice. It was about choosing a path and walking it, no matter where it led. Emily picked up her coat and left the house, heading for the same cafe where she and Jake had met weeks ago. As she walked, she tried to clear her mind, to find some sense of calm. The crisp autumn air helped, and for the first time in days she felt like she could breathe a little easier. Arriving at the cafe, she saw Jake sitting at a table near the window, just as he had before. His expression was serious, but his eyes softened when he saw her walk in. He stood up, and for a moment, they simply stood there, looking at each other, both of them unsure of what to say next. Emily took a deep breath and sat down. "Jake," she said quietly, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I've been thinking a lot. About us, about everything." He nodded, waiting for her to continue, giving her the space to say what she needed to say. "I'm not sure what the future holds, but I can't keep living in the past," Emily continued. "I'm not ready to forget everything, but I think I'm ready to move forward. Not just with you, but with myself. I need to rebuild trust, not just in you, but in myself too." Jake's eyes filled with hope, but he didn't interrupt her. He just listened, knowing how hard this was for her. "I don't know if we can go back to what we had," she added, "but I'm willing to try. Not for the sake of the past, but for the possibility of something better. I'm willing to take a chance." Jake's face softened, and he reached across the table, his hand resting gently on hers. "Emily, I'll do whatever it takes. I promise you, I won't let you down again." She looked at him, her heart racing. There were no guarantees, no promises of a perfect future. But in that moment, she knew that this was the only way forward for her. Whatever happened next, she was taking control of her life, choosing a future that was hers to shape. She took his hand, a small but significant step towards rebuilding something, whether it was a second chance or simply a path to healing. And with that, the uncertainty that had plagued her began to fade, replaced by a sense of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this could be the beginning of something new. Emily and Jake continued their quiet walk through the park, the autumn leaves crunching under their feet. It felt like the weight of the world had been lifted, but it wasn't completely gone. There was still the uncertainty of the future, of what their decision would mean for both of them. Emily had chosen to take the first step, to trust him again, but the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. They both knew that. As they walked side by side, the silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, but reflective. Emily stole a glance at Jake, noticing how much calmer he seemed now, how different he was compared to the man who had once walked away. "I'm glad we talked," Emily said softly, breaking the silence. "I'm still scared, but I'm glad I didn't let that fear hold me back." Jake looked at her, his expression sincere. "I'm scared too," he admitted. "But I'm not going anywhere. I'm here, Emily. I'll be here for as long as it takes." Emily nodded, appreciating his words. She had always appreciated his honesty, even when it was hard to hear. "I know," she replied, her voice tinged with vulnerability. "But it's not just about you. It's about me too. I need to rebuild my own trust in myself, in my decisions. And I need to do that, whether or not it's with you." Jake squeezed her hand gently, a sign of understanding. "I get it," he said. "And I'm not asking you to make a decision now. I'll be here, supporting you, no matter what. I just want to be a part of your life again, if you'll let me." His words hung in the air, and Emily felt a strange sense of peace wash over her. She didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was on the right path. She didn't need to rush into anything. She didn't need to have it all figured out immediately. All she had to do was take one step at a time, trusting herself and the process. As they reached a bench, Jake motioned for them to sit. They sat down, their hands still intertwined, and for a moment, neither of them said anything. It was enough just to be in each other's presence, to know that they were both willing to try, to move forward. The sound of birds chirping in the distance, and the rustle of leaves in the breeze filled the silence. Emily felt a shift inside herself, a quiet realization that the healing had already begun. Not all wounds heal overnight, and not all relationships can be fixed in one conversation. But this, what they were building together, felt different. She could see the potential, the possibility of something beautiful, even if it meant taking things slowly. There was no rush. And there was no perfect ending, but there was a beginning, and that was enough for now. "I'm ready to try," Emily said softly, breaking the silence once more. "Not just with you, but with myself. I'm ready to see where this goes." Jake smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for giving us a chance." And with that they sat there together, looking out at the world around them, knowing that whatever came next, they were no longer walking alone. They had each other, and for now, that was all that mattered.